Jonathan kept at it fiercely, day after day, from before sunrise till past midnight. And for all his effort, he moved not a feather width from his spot. Forget about fate. Cheyenne said it time and again. You didn't need fate to fly. You needed to understand flying. This is just the same. Now try again. Then one day, Jonathan, standing on the shore, closing his eyes, concentrating, all in a flash, knew what Cheyenne had been telling him. Why, that's true. I am a perfect, unlimited gull. He felt a great shock of joy. Good, said Cheyenne, and there was victory in his voice. Jonathan opened his eyes. He stood alone with the elder on a totally different seashore. Trees down to the water's edge, twin yellow suns turning overhead. At last you've got the idea, Cheyenne said. What you control needs a little work. Jonathan was stunned. Where are we? Utterly unimpressed with the strange surroundings, the elder brushed the question aside. We're on some planet, obviously, with a green sky and a double star for a sun. Jonathan made a scream of delight, the first sound he had made since he had left Earth. It works! Well, of course it works, John, said Cheyenne. It always works when you know what you're doing. Now, about your control. By the time they returned, it was dark. The other gulls looked at Jonathan with awe in their golden eyes, for they had seen him disappear from where he had been rooted for so long. He stood their congratulations for less than a minute. I'm the newcomer here. I'm just beginning. It is I who must learn from you. I wonder about that, John, said Sullivan, standing near. You have less fear of learning than any gull I've seen in 10,000 years. The flock fell silent, and Jonathan fidgeted in embarrassment. We can start working with time if you wish, said Cheyenne, till you can fly the past and the future. And then you will be ready to begin the most difficult, the most powerful, the most fun of all. You will be ready to begin to fly up and know the meaning of kindness and of love. He always had learned quickly from ordinary experiences, and now, the special student of the elder himself, he took in new ideas like a streamlined, feathered computer. But then the day came that Cheyenne vanished. He had been talking quietly with them all, exhorting them never to stop their learning and their practicing, and their striving to understand more of the perfect, invisible principle of all life. Then, as he spoke, his feathers went brighter and brighter, and at last turned so brilliant that no gull could look upon it. Jonathan, he said, and these were the last words that he spoke, keep on working on love. When they could see again, Cheyenne was gone. As the days went past, Jonathan found himself thinking time and again of the earth from which he had come. If he had known there just a tenth, just 100th of what he knew here, how much more life would have meant. He stood on the sand and fell to wondering if there was a gull back there who might be struggling to break out of his limits, to see the meaning of flight beyond a way of travel, to get a breadcrumb from a rowboat. Perhaps there might even have been one made outcast for speaking his truth in the face of the flock. And the more Jonathan practiced his kindness lessons, and the more he worked to know the nature of love, the more he wanted to go back to earth. For in spite of his lonely past, Jonathan Seagull was born to be an instructor. And his own way of demonstrating love was to give something of the truth that he had seen to a gull who asked only a chance to see truth for himself. Sullivan, adept now at thought-speed flight, and helping the others to learn, was doubtful. John, you were outcast once. Why do you think that any of the gulls in your old times would listen to you now? You know the proverb, and it's true. The gull sees farthest who flies highest. Those gulls where you came from are standing on the ground, squawking and fighting amongst themselves. They're 1,000 miles from heaven. And you say you want to show them heaven from where they stand. John, they can't see their own wingtip. stay here. Help the new girls here, the ones who are high enough to see what you have to tell them. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "What if Cheyenne had gone back to his old worlds? Where would you have been today?" The last point was a telling one, and Sullivan was right. The gull sees farthest, who flies highest. Jonathan stayed and worked with the new birds coming in. They were all very bright and quick with their lessons. But the old feeling came back, and he couldn't help but think that there might be one or two gulls back on Earth who would be able to learn too. How much more he would have known by now if Cheyenne had come to him on the day that he was outcast. "Sully, I must go back," he said at last. Sullivan sighed, but he did not argue. "I think I'll miss you, Jonathan," was all he said. "Sully, for shame," Jonathan said in reproach, "and don't be foolish. What are we trying to practice every day? If our friendship depends on things like space and time, then when we finally overcome space and time, we've destroyed our own brotherhood. But overcome space, and all we have left is here. Overcome time, and all we have left is now. And in the middle of here and now, don't you think that we might see each other once or twice?" Livingston Seagull laughed in spite of himself. "You crazy bird," he said kindly. "If anyone can show someone on the ground how to see 1,000 miles, it would be Jonathan Livingston Seagull." He looked at the sand. "Goodbye, John, my friend. Goodbye, Sully. We'll meet again." And with that, Jonathan held in thought an image of the great gull flocks on the shore of another time, and he knew with practiced ease that he was not bone and feathers, but a perfect idea of freedom and flight, limited by nothing at all. Fletcher Lynn Seagull was still quite young, but already he knew that no bird had ever been so harshly treated by any flock, or with so much injustice. "I don't care what they say," he thought fiercely, and his vision blurred as he flew out towards the far cliffs. "There's so much more to flying than just flapping around from place to place. A mosquito does that. One little barrel roll around the elder gull, just for fun, and I'm outcast. Are they blind? Can't they see? Can't they think of the glory that it will be when we really learn to fly? I don't care what they think. I'll show them what flying is. I'll be pure outlaw, if that's the way they want it. And I'll make them so sorry." The voice came inside his own head, and though it was very gentle, it startled him so much that he faltered and stumbled in the air. "Don't be harsh on them, Fletcher Seagull. In casting you out, the other gulls have only hurt themselves. And one day they will know this, and one day they will see what you see. Forgive them, and help them to understand." An inch from his right wingtip flew the most brilliant white gull in all the world, gliding effortlessly along, not moving a feather, at what was very nearly Fletcher's top speed. There was a moment of chaos in the young bird. What's going on? Am I mad? Am I dead? What is this? Low and calm, the voice went on within his thoughts, demanding an answer. "Fletcher Lynn Seagull, do you want to fly?" "Yes, I want to fly." "Fletcher Lynn Seagull, do you want to fly so much that you will forgive the flock and learn, and go back to them one day and work to help them know?" There was no lying to this magnificent, skillful being. No matter how proud or how hurt a bird was Fletcher Seagull. "I do," he said softly. Then Fletcher, that bright creature, said to him, and the voice was very kind, "Let's begin with level flight. Jonathan circled slowly over the far cliffs, watching. This rough young Fletcher gull was very nearly a perfect flight student. He was strong and light and quick in the air, but far and away more important, he had a blazing drive to learn to fly. By the end of 3 months, Jonathan had 6 other students, outcasts all, yet curious about the strange new idea of flight, for the joy of flying. Still, it was easier for them to practice high performance than it was to understand the reason behind it. Each of us is in truth an idea of the great gull, an unlimited idea of freedom, Jonathan would say in the evenings on the beach. And precision flying is a step towards expressing our real nature. Everything that limits us, we have to put aside. And that's why all this high-speed practice and low-speed and aerobatics. And his students would be asleep, exhausted from the day's flying. They liked the practice because it was fast and exciting, and it fed a hunger for learning that grew with every lesson. But not one of them, not even Fletcher Lind Gull, had come to believe that the flight of ideas could possibly be as real as the flight of wind and feather. Your whole body, from wingtip to wingtip, Jonathan would say other times, is nothing more than your thought itself, in a form you can see. Break the chains of your thought, and you break the chains of your body too. But no matter how he said it, it sounded like pleasant fiction, and they needed more to sleep. It was only a month later that Jonathan said the time had come to return to the flock. There was a brief anguish amongst his students, for it is the law of the flock that an outcast never returns, and the law had not been broken once in 10,000 years. Despite this, they flew in from the west that morning, 8 of them, in a double diamond formation, wingtips almost overlapping. They came across the flock's council beach at 135 miles per hour, Jonathan in the lead, Fletcher smoothly at his right wing, Henry Calvin struggling gamely at his left, and the whole formation rose slowly to the right as one bird, level, two, inverted, two level, the wind whipping over them all. The squawks and the grokles of everyday life in the flock were cut off as though the formation were a giant knife, and 8,000 gull eyes watched without a single blink. One by one, each of the 8 birds pulled sharply upward into a full loop and flew all the way around to a dead slow stand-up landing on the sand. It went like lightning through the flock. Those birds are outcast, and they have returned, and that can't happen. Well, okay, they are outcasts, said some of the younger gulls, but where do they learn to fly like that? It took almost an hour for the word of the elder to pass through the flock. Ignore them. The gull who speaks to an outcast is himself outcast. The gull who looks upon an outcast breaks the law of the flock. Grey feathered backs were turned upon Jonathan from that moment onward, but he didn't appear to notice. He held his practice session directly over the council beach, and for the first time began pressing his students to the limit of their ability. Every hour he was there at the side of each of his students, demonstrating, suggesting, pressuring, guiding. He flew with them through night and cloud and storm for the sport of it, while the flock huddled miserably on the ground. When the flying was done, the students relaxed on the sand, and in time they listened more closely to Jonathan. He had some crazy ideas that they couldn't understand, but then he had some good ones, if they could. Gradually, in the night, another circle formed around the circle of students, a circle of curious gulls listening in the darkness for hours on end, not wishing to see or be seen of one another, fading away before daybreak. It was a month after the return that the first gull of the flock crossed the line and asked to learn how to fly. In his asking, Terence Lowell Gull became a condemned bird, labeled outcast, and the eighth of Jonathan's students. The next night from the flock came Kirk Maynard Gull, wobbling across the sand, dragging his left wing to collapse at Jonathan's feet. "Help me," he said very quietly, speaking in the way that the dying speak. "I want to fly more than anything else in the world." "Come along then," said Jonathan. "Climb with me away from the ground and we'll begin." "You don't understand. My wing. I can't move my wing." "Maynard Gull, you have the freedom to be yourself, your true self, here and now, and nothing can stand in your way. It is the law of the great gull, the law that is. Are you saying I can fly? I say you are free." As simply and as quickly as that, Kirk Maynard Gull spread his wings effortlessly and lifted into the dark night air. The flock were aroused from sleep by his cry, as loud as he could scream it from 5,000 feet up. "I can fly! Listen, I can fly!" By sunrise, there were nearly 1,000 birds standing outside the circle of students, looking curiously at Maynard. They didn't care whether they were seen or not, and they listened, trying to understand Jonathan Seagull. He spoke of very simple things, that it is right for a gull to fly, that freedom is the very nature of his being, that whatever stands against that freedom must be set aside, be it ritual or superstition or limitation of any form. "Set aside," came a voice in the multitude, "even if it be the law of the flock." "The only true law is that which leads to freedom," Jonathan said. "There is no other." "How do you expect us to fly as you fly?" came another voice. "You are special and gifted and divine above other birds." The price of being misunderstood, Jonathan thought. They call you devil or they call you God. Why is it, Jonathan puzzled, that the hardest thing in the world is to convince a bird that he is free and that he can prove it for himself if he just spend a little time practicing? Why should it be so hard? Jonathan sighed and looked out to sea. "You don't need me any longer. You need to keep finding yourselves a little more each day." A moment later, Jonathan's body wavered in the air, shimmering, and began to go transparent. "Don't let them spread silly rumors about me, or make me a god. I am a seagull. I like to fly." The shimmering stopped. Jonathan Seagull had vanished into empty air.